along this line. All right, other ideas that you either heard or said?
Well, when we do testing for reading or for math, we'll circle it if it's incorrect and do a check by it. And there's my reading ones, I have them bring it over and I grade it right in front of them. And so if there's something that I've circled, I will point out which part of the story they need to go back to, because my kids sometimes can't figure out where in the test they're looking. They get very confused by that, since their first year was actually reading a story and then taking a test to follow it in second grade. So I'll point them in the direction that they need to go. And they get 2 chances to get it right, and then after that, you're just done.
And we talked about the same thing that you mentioned here. Almost everything that you mentioned here is what we are doing. But usually in the essay itself, when I give feedback, my main focus will be with that strand. If it is figurative language, if it is the crafting, whatever, and I wanted to pay attention to this only thing. Otherwise, it will be overwhelming for that student. So I will just put a detailed, descriptive, kind of feedback on the side and give them suggestions how to, really where to go from there. And sometimes I turn to the students themselves, and then they will be peer editors and peer reviewers, and they will bring suggestions to the table, but it needs lots of training
Yes.
to get them there.
Other ideas?
I teach first grade, and it's harder to write stuff on theirs. I told Lindsay I use a lot of like the oral stuff, but I said, like even just writing a positive comment, or kind of like she does if it's wrong, I'll circle it and tell them to go back and look at it. But it's hard with vision.
That's we were at a conference a couple of weekends ago, maybe now, down at the lake, and Chris Devani was, she also writes books for English teachers and content teachers on how to teach writing and live to tell about reading and writing. And she was talking about how she sets a timer for herself, that her goal is to get through a class set of papers in 30 minutes. And so I thought, I wonder if I can do that. And so it wasn't essays, I wasn't writing essays, but I had, a worksheet that I needed to reply. They'd written several paragraphs on there that I wanted to give them feedback. And I did that when I got home. And I thought, okay, I got 5 sets of papers, 30 minutes each. That's still 2.5 hours, but okay, let's see if I can do this in time. And somehow setting the timer and knowing that my goal was to be done in 30 minutes, I was amazed that often I was done in about 20 minutes. Now, obviously, these aren't essay papers, but most of us aren't grading essays. We're just replying to worksheet kinds of things, or they've read this and they're writing. And I was able to write specific feedback on everybody's something, because I decided, okay, what one thing am I going to give them feedback about? And how am I going to grade this? So I made that decision beforehand, like how many points is this worth? Which parts am I going to give them points for? What one thing am I going to be looking for that I'm going to write descriptive feedback about? And somehow having that timer going just forced me to move faster. And I kept flipping through them, and I was done in like an hour and 45 minutes instead of 2.5 hours. And I had even so anyway, it was really motivating. And then I had grades to enter, and I thought, okay, the next day I did the same thing. Maybe I can enter this. I had stacks of papers. I was so behind. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get behind on entering that stuff into the computer. And I thought, okay, how long do I think it's going to take me to enter a stack of papers? And I had probably 6 or 7 assignments per class, and I thought, okay, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes and see if I can do it. And so it just, I don't know, that has helped me in the last week, 2 weeks, I guess. So maybe that suggestion will help you as well. Oral feedback, we've kind of been talking about. Praise prompt leave is that idea of when you're, and you can do that in writing as well, but that idea of coming when you're in a conference with the kids. What's one good thing? What's one thing we need to work on? And then move on. Oh, no problem. You were in the car, just in the car, and you wanted to be able to hear it. I understand that. So we practiced that last time when we were paired up with each other. That's the one that we practiced there. Make an audio recording of your feedback, allowing students to listen to it. I know one of the teachers in my building, Patty, is really working on that. And so she just makes a little recording and has them on her iPad, and then has different kids rotate through that. How that's working, I haven't had a chance to talk to her about that. I know she was So that's one idea from another colleague. And then to confer with the student and then have the kid to take notes while they're talking. That's what we kind of talked about. That oftentimes we're sitting there and we're talking to the kid and we walk away and they aren't quite sure what to do. Or we're taking notes for them. Like, here are some things you might do. But if they do that, they're more likely to internalize that. The thing I want to note at the bottom before you talk about other oral feedback ideas is that Kelly Gallagher talks about that we need to think about grading a fourth of the stuff we assign as writing, or we won't assign enough writing. That's one of the things we know about American education is that we don't assign enough writing for kids to do, that they don't get enough practice with that. And it's because we don't want to have to grade it. We're thinking, oh, if I assign it, I have to grade it. It's really okay. Just them having done the writing is going to help them. Giving them little bits of feedback is going to be better than no feedback. Having them have written and then you just check plus minus it, or that 1 to 4 rating scale that Columbia Public Schools kids are used to. They know what that means, and so just kind of think about that you are not responsible. You do not have to give them feedback or grade everything you assign if it's going to be writing. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to talk to your partners, come up with any other oral feedback ideas, and pick one of these ideas that you could use, that you will use in the next month to give feedback to your kids in some way. Okay, so make a decision about that. Go. That might work. I think oftentimes one of the biggest hurdles with assigning writing is figuring out how to live to tell about the grading and actually see your family during that time and do other things that you want to do. So hopefully these will be some suggestions that can work for you. We'd love to hear back from you next month about which strategy you picked and what worked, and if that timer thing was useful to you. It has helped me. I've got 2 stacks that I have to deal with this weekend, so that's my plan in the midst of everything else. And I think did anybody, before we go on, other oral feedback ideas that you either said or heard? Yeah, great.
I do a lot of question asking, and that can be at the individual level or whole group. It can be a question like, before you hand in your work, which makes the grading easier ultimately if you're actually grading, would you check that each sentence has this that you need to have? Like, we just did a thing with each sentence had to have 2 verbs, and as soon as I said check to make sure, when you're saying I'm going to go, check to make sure that each sentence has 2 verbs. I could see them go, oh, and they quickly fixed it before they handed it in. So asking the question of the big group works, and when I'm walking around, I often ask the same person.
Other one?
My students can volunteer to put their work under the Smart Document camera and tell the class what they're struggling with, and the class can give suggestions back. And so it works much better at this time of the year than the beginning. The beginning you tend to use just work from either that I saved from past classes or whatnot, because the trust isn't quite there yet.
Right.
But this time of year it works really well.
I've seen that work really well in math classrooms, which is interesting because they can put it underneath a problem underneath a Smart Document, and then have their peers tell them in language that makes sense to them where the questions are, the issues are, that kind of thing. It's been really effective, and classrooms have good community.
When you guys say stuff like that, it makes me want to have my son in your class. I want you to know, I don't teach elementary school. I can't connect with a lot of the specific things you guys do and are able to do with those kids all day, but those are the sorts of things that I'm like, oh man, I hope my kids have those experiences in class, because I can't imagine how much confidence that would give them to be able to ask for that kind of help, and then also to be able to feel knowledgeable enough to give that sort of assistance would be really confidence building.
We do a lot of fixing errors together when we're reading it, because if you just mark things that need to be changed and they go on to that second draft, they don't put those changes in.
Sure.
So we really talk about what it is. A lot of the kids, it's just capitalization and periods, but then with some of my more advanced writers getting into putting quotation marks in or vocabulary choices. So we do a lot of it together while the other kids are writing. But then again, we only have like 14 or 16 kids in our class, so.
That is a blessing. That is wonderful.
In North Callaway.
That's awesome. It's the advantage of being in a small school.
Smaller grade, smaller classes.
Okay, so we just really encourage you to kind of think about a method that's going to work for you in the next couple of weeks and give us some feedback about how that went. And I think we're ready to move on to